So we're going to make a start covering effective sales process today, and we're doing it in two sessions, as you know, if you read the information about the session. So to start with, I just wanted to bring you a quote from the master, which is, to me, is Zig Ziglar. I always use these quotes. I think he's an amazing sales person. And this quote is all about paying too much rather than paying too little. And the reason I brought it today is because I think that you obviously, as somebody who sells your services for your business or market your services for your business, want to make as much money as you should, and you want people to pay at the top end rather than the lower end, and you don't want people arguing with you. And in order to do that, you have to have a process. You have to deliver value to people, and that can't be done on the hoof. You have to have a process. You have to think about it. So actually, the main reason for me to have a sales process is because it actually maximizes on what you get back and on your return for all your hard work. So I thought that was a good one to bring today. What we will cover. So we'll start with Aaron covering key reasons to the lack of having an effective sales process. So the reasons are far and wide. Be interesting to see what Aaron thinks. And then, Aaron, you're also going to talk a little bit about buyer's motivation, aren't you, today?
Mm-hmm.
And then I will cover some main gaps that I find along my journeys to working on sales process with people, which I think are quite typical, and some tips of how to make them work better. And then we'll have a Q&A, and if we'll have like a really brave person that will talk about any issues they might have with their sales process, we can maybe cover that, but otherwise just ask questions. So I'm going to give it over to Aaron.
And it's when we're vulnerable that we really get to benefit from things like that. So amazing. Well, great to see everyone. Before we get started off into this main part, I just wanted to get a really good idea of just what's going on in the room, because as Yafit was saying, we have these sales process to streamline, to make sure we can make as much money as possible, to promote our services as best we can. But the real reason why we have the sales process in place is because, can I just get a show of hands in the room? How many people started their business because they love what they do? Good. That's a solid half of the room. That's excellent to see. Now, who also was under the misguided impression that they might get to do more of what they actually set up their business to do than what they actually get to? And often the reason is that they don't tell us that there's a whole bunch of sales and marketing. There's a whole bunch of potentially networking. There could be also all of these bookkeeping, all of these things that we weren't really knowing that we were going to have to do in our business. And it's things like having a sales process that can actually really make that a lot more streamlined, so that we can actually do a lot more of what we set up our business to do. So luckily for us, we're habitual creatures, and we're wired to create processes to conserve time and energy. Unfortunately, that the emphasis is more on creating those processes rather than making sure that those processes are actually efficient or that they actually work. Now, this results in one of two different things. So one, we do the same thing over and over again, and we're expecting a different result, which some say is the definition for insanity. But at the time, it can just feel like it's really good common sense. Other times, we change what we're doing to create a different outcome. And that's where having a really efficient and effective sales process is a really brilliant example of this in the business world. Now, we say this, and yet often this can be the Achilles heel in a business where we either don't have a sales process, or the sales process that we have just isn't very efficient, or it isn't providing reliable results. And this can really stop us in our business. Can I just get, again, just a quick show of hands, who has a sales process in some way, shape, or form at the moment? Got a few? Okay, excellent. Who has a sales process that is really efficient and it's pumping out the right kind of results month in, month out? Okay, less hands there. Yeah, well, one. Okay, Ian, there was a bit of a sheepish hand there. And I think with this, it's always about, it can be efficient, but we can always look to be making these things better as well. So that's excellent. And the other, who has a process who doesn't really give reliable results. Some months it'll do really, really well, and other months not so much. Yeah, okay, excellent. Now, anyone who didn't put up their hands, I'm just going to assume that you either don't have a sales process as yet, which I'm sure that your feed will have some great tips there, or possibly you've signed up for the wrong webinar by mistake. So this could be, yeah, a bit relevant for you. Amazing. So there's a mix there, and kind of going back to something your feet said a little bit earlier, I just want to really put out there that there's nothing right or wrong. We're going to be talking about preferences and also some ways that might be considered good business sense. But I would just get everyone to consider that there's no such thing as right or wrong. There's no such thing as good or bad. There's no such thing as success or failure when it comes to these things. It's really just preferences. They're indications of where you're at this point in time. And it's really just about noticing these things as they are and just objectively observing that this is what reality is right now. And also it could highlight some really good opportunities for some quick gains and some growth. So back to this slide. Okay, so what is one of the big reasons why we don't actually have a sales process? Or a big reason why we don't do what we feel like we should be doing. Now, my view on this is a lot of it comes down to fear. So if there's something that you know will make life easier, you know it'll give you your time back, and if you just know it's in general good business sense, and yet we still find reasons not to do it or not to make it as efficient as it can possibly be, it's because we have some sort of fear there, or we're not completely clear, or we don't completely understand why it's important. And often that comes from being afraid to say that we don't really understand it, we don't really know why we're doing it, which again comes back to being fear. So it's like often there's fear, and it could be quite a few layers down. Now, some of you might be saying, like, what does fear have to do with business? Or fear is a little bit touchy-feely. Does that really have anything to do with this? I'm a big believer that there are very few actual business problems in the world. And more often than not, we are business owners experiencing human problems rather than humans experiencing business problems. So an example of this on the slide that I've used here is that so it was the ineffective marketing and sales. Now, often you probably all heard the saying, how we do anything is how we do everything. So if we're having some issues where we don't really feel like we're putting our message across in our marketing and sales, it could be indicative of how we're communicating in our personal life as well. We might not find that we're getting the right kind of results that we want in our personal relationships just because we do have a little bit of a breakdown in how we communicate with people, or we're not being our authentic self. Another example of this is someone who might have perfectionist tendencies. They have a huge fear of judgment and failure. Sometimes this will be because they just really want to deliver high levels of quality, but other times it's really driven by fear, and it's because they're absolutely petrified that if they deliver subpar work, that will mean something really poorly about them, whereas it's really not a reflection of a person, it's just their behavior. So it's just really, really good to one, separate behavior from identity, your personal identity, as well as the business's identity, and just really look at these things as behaviors, and you're always looking to improve them and to get better and better and better. And I think one other thing here that I just want, and again, it's just something to consider, is that a lot of business owners, me included in that, we want different strategies, different tactics, like what's the new way that we can all, get 10 clients in the next 10 minutes or whatever every other marketing post on LinkedIn is saying. And it's just really about, seeing in that, is what I have actually good? And there's just something on me, something about me and how I'm executing it that I need to look at, rather than putting the blame out here on the strategies and tactics. Just putting in a bit of an inquiry just to see if there's anything that you need to be doing differently in how you're executing it, and really just owning your results as well as the actions that you're putting into it, just to see if it's in fact new strategies and tactics, or if it's just something that you're working on. You can just go to the next slide, please, Yafi.
You can do it yourself, I believe.
Can I?
Maybe not, because you're a co-host, but I could be wrong. But I've moved it on for you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so just looking at some of the main reasons why business owners don't have an effective sales process in place. And again, this isn't just not having a sales process full stop, but they might have a sales process, but it's just not as effective as they would like it to be. So it's, again, like when we're looking at behavior, there's a lot comes down to patterns. So if we're putting up with the same thing for quite a long period of time with no change in, we're not taking any action, or we haven't actually changed the result, and there's a pattern going on for us that we're stuck in. So it's just good just to notice these things. Now, these are the common ones that I've come across in all of the businesses that I've worked in, as well as ones that I've come across in myself. So I just want to put that out there. This is me kind of sharing vulnerability on where I've kind of fallen prey to some of these things in the past. And I think it's sometimes in that vulnerable sharing that people can kind of see themselves in your examples, and they can kind of be like, well, because especially on LinkedIn, in the professional world, we can think we have to be perfect. If we're not perfect, then that means that we're not trustworthy. People can't work with us. And we just make it mean a whole lot of things about us. But it's really in this vulnerable sharing that we all kind of just see that we're human at the end of the day, and we've all got value that we're bringing to the table. So the first one that I came across was that they feel like that they're too small. So they don't have a sales process or an effective sales process, because they just feel like they're too small. It's like one day when I get to a certain size, then I'll start doing things properly. Then I'll start to have processes in place. And often it can be this thinking that keeps that business or that person small and unable to go to the next level. It's kind of like they're just thinking in where they're at now rather than where they want to be. Or sometimes there will actually be times where they're able to get to that next level, but inevitably, as they get busier, they also have many more things that are vying for their time. And just suddenly, whether we're going to take this time and spend it to put in a process and streamline things, suddenly that just keeps on getting kicked down the road into that mythical and magical day where they just suddenly have all of this time, which I think we all know from experience just never seems to happen. So there's also a fear here. So again, like this is kind of, if you look a couple of layers down, there's often a fear. And this is the fear of what happens if I get too busy too quickly, or if I get too big, and then I could lose control, and then I could lose it all. So you have like, they have this desire to grow and accelerating you forward, but also there's that fear of uncertainty that's really putting on the brakes. So if you imagine a car that's got its foot down on the floor on the accelerator, and then it also the hand up on the handbrake and the foot on the brake, you've got energy that's pulling you in two different directions, and that causes a lot of internal conflict. And it's a really, it's not a very good position to be in, because you feel like you should be doing this and you should be doing that, rather than what do I actually want to be doing here. So again, like a lot of this always comes back to authenticity. Can anyone relate to this here, where they felt at some point in their business that they just feel like they're too small for something? Like one day they will go and they will do all these things properly, but for now they're too small to do any of that. Does anyone relate to that? Yeah. And again, like none of this is right or wrong, good or bad. These are just really indications of where we're at in our business, and also preferences of where we're at the moment. I really love the Charles Spurgeon quote here that says, "Begin as you mean to go on." And that's just, if you want a business that's of a decent size, like start adopting some of the practices that a bigger business would, or how they would do business. And also similarly, dress for the job that you have, not the job that you want. And I think one thing here, I think that even if we do see ourselves as small, that's a story that we're telling ourselves. Like a lot of how we're socialized will tell us that, you're only like, it does keep us quite small. And that's a story, and it's a BS story. So if we're going to tell ourselves stories, why not tell ourselves, stories on how we see ourselves as the giant that we already are? And that way we have something to step into rather than something to withhold. Another reason that I hear quite a bit is, I wouldn't have a clue how clients find me. I have no idea where they look. I have no idea how they make their decisions. Now, this one, really deep down, if you go a few layers down, and this can sting a little bit, really there's a fear of intimacy and rejection here. There's a fear of letting your clients in, really getting to know them, finding out what they like, what they don't like, and you running away when things get intense or a little bit uncomfortable with that person, rather than just kind of using that as an opportunity to lean in and really get to know and understand someone. There's no depth, loyalty, trust in a relationship without intimacy. and you can't reach that level unless you're prepared to get rejected. So that's, I mean, I'll be the first to, when I started my business, this was the one that really took me a long time to get over. It took a huge amount for me to stay when I felt uncomfortable. All I wanted to do was run and hide. But I've learned holding yourself in that situation, being comfortable in the discomfort, really allows you to be, and also your client as well, to be seen and to heard. And that's the only way that you can really connect to the people that you're committed to serving. Next one. So another reason business owners don't have an effective sales process in place is that they don't know how to create a sales process, or it's too complicated, or they're not techie, or they don't do funnels, all of that sort of stuff, all of the stuff that your feed is really good at. So this one is probably one of the most common ones that I hear, and it's that they really don't want to make mistakes. They really don't want to, ultimately it's that they don't want to fail. So the real kicker here though is that you can learn anything on Google and YouTube, anything that you want, and it's free, and we could all do it. But the real truth here is that if you tried, there's a real possibility that you could fail. And if we succeed, suddenly we're succeeding, and a lot more people are seeing that we're succeeding. And then we have to be able to sustain that. And often the fear of success is really a fear of failure, because what happens if we succeed, more people are looking at us, and then we just fail, but we fail in front of more people. So that's one to look out for there. I think this is one that we can all relate to at times, and I think it's to our credit as business owners. This is one that we really have to push through. Another one is, I don't have enough time to do this. Now, this one is pretty counterintuitive. I don't have time to do something that's going to give me back my time. Doesn't really make sense. But there's a combination of a few things happening here. So one, it's a fear of failure, as well as possibly being very busy, not necessarily productive, but spreading yourself very thin, and potentially maybe losing sight of what's actually important. And often it's around feeling like you have to do everything. You're the best at doing everything, even some of the more menial jobs that you want to be passing out. But it's really not wanting to drop any of the balls, and kind of not even wanting to drop any of the balls to see actually which ones aren't actually all that important and that you don't need to be doing. So the most important thing here is priorities, really just understanding what is the most important thing. We can do a million things horribly, or we can do a few things brilliantly.
Next slide.
Yes, please. Thank you. Amazing. So most important thing about fear is that it only has a hold over you while it stays hidden, or if we're in denial, because often we can soften, we can deny that there's fear there, because we don't want people to know that we might feel it. But as long as it stays hidden, that's when it has power over us. The moment you take ownership of it is the moment you get back in the driver's seat. And fear is often scary because we don't know whether what you want is possible. One of the biggest things here is finding a role model. Find someone who is already achieving what you want to be achieving. And once you know that something is possible in the world and you see evidence of it, then that's where you can really break through some of these things, once you know it can happen. Another thing I would say there is, when you're looking at what these role models are doing, is remember that very little in this world is original, and amateurs borrow and professionals steal, naturally within the confines of like copyright and trademark law. But very little out there is actually original work. And on the other side of fear is freedom. It only takes a few seconds of courage and action to break through what can be some scary moments and to completely liberate yourself there. Just to get a show of hands, who can think of a time where they've been absolutely petrified of doing something, but in spite of that, they've still pushed through and they've overcome it, and then they've pushed themselves out there and they've gone and done that thing anyway that they were scared of? Amazing. And it's often just recognizing that we have experience of these things and knowing that we can keep on doing them again and again and again. And that's how we keep on pushing outside of our comfort zone. We get a little bit bigger every single time. Get the next slide, please, Jeffy. Amazing. Thank you. So this is just a few different areas on how people are motivated to make buying decisions. The other thing about, just to sort of finish off on fear, is that if you know what your potential clients are looking for and what motivates their buying decision, that can take a lot of fear out of it as well. A lot of the time, fear is just not understanding a particular situation. So there's many different things that motivate behavior. So from physical needs to fear, to values, to beliefs, most of which are quite contextual. For example, you might want a Ferrari in red, but the thought of a red Honda, no offense to anyone in the room that has a red Honda, might sound a bit ridiculous to you. Or you might be opposed to murder, but the death penalty may be acceptable in a particularly horrific case. So there's some context that's involved there. What we're looking at here is something that is less likely to be contextual, and it's a different kind of programming. So it's a way of being that we are, and it's more consistent across different areas of your life. And if you think about this like a DJ mixing board, or like you would see in a sound producer's studio, just with these dials. And if you imagine that there's a slider going from left to right for each of these, just to give you an indication of which side of the scale these are on and at what kind of intensity. So we'll be looking at. So if everyone can just really just spend a few seconds just bringing to mind their favorite customer, like the person that they walk into, or you see them, or you jump on a Zoom call with them, whatever the case might be, and you're actually excited to jump on that call, and just seeing them brings a smile to your face, and you really get that they value what you do, they really appreciate what you do, and they get a lot of value from it, and they're most importantly, they are happy to pay you what you're worth. There's never any quibbles around value. So knowing where your favorite clients' preferences sit on this sliding scale, that'll help you to communicate with more people that are just like them in your marketing, and you'll also be better equipped to predict their behavior when it comes to creating an effective sales process that's going to lead more of them to you. So the first one that we're looking at here is the motivation between towards. Is your favorite customer motivated towards achievement, reward, success, or are they moving away from or trying to solve or avoid pain, problems, and discomfort? You may have heard this described as the old carrot and stick. So this will help you because you know exactly how to speak to potential customers in your marketing. Insurance broker or Steve might say something, are you at risk of something to do with health or the insurance? And that's just really noticing that those people are worried about their health, they're worried about their insurance. So you're meeting that need, you're showing them that you understand what matters to them, and then you're presenting your product. Same as on the other side, you might have like a luxury brand, and they might talk about looking successful or feeling like a queen. And this really comes in handy when it comes to your sales process, because you could be running a competition. Again, for those people that are motivated towards something, you might run a competition that has prizes. Or say, for example, a car mechanic might schedule a call every year to make sure to remind their clients that they need to be bringing their car in for a service. Otherwise, something bad might happen to them, or just to stop anything from bad happening. Now, so and it might be interesting to see. What I'll do is at the end, if anyone wants like a worksheet with this, just to kind of sit down with this and really pinpoint where their favorite clients are. And it might also be interesting exercise for you to pinpoint where you are on these scales as well, just to really get an understanding of your preferences. So I'll send that out. But just really, as we go through these, just really trying to find out where your favorite client sits on this side of things. If you don't know where they might sit, might be a good idea to jump on a call with one of them and kind of just interview them. Use this sheet, and then you'd be able to just give them a score out of 1 to 10 on where they feel like they are on that. And that'll really help you to put a lot of this together. The next one is, and again, just remember with these, like, none of them are good nor bad, right or wrong. These are just preferences, and these are just how people are. And this just enables us to be able to predict or have a better understanding of their behavior. Next up is, are they internally referenced or externally referenced, which is the second one down. So what this means is that people who are internally referenced have a strong sense of what is right and wrong for them based on their own standards. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum is externally referenced, and they're the people that are looking for recommendations or expert advice. So knowing this will really help you. It'll really help you in the sales process side of things, because it'll tell you whether you should be selling directly to them, or if you should be using more testimonials, case studies, joint venture partnerships where they will be endorsing you because they're the people that they're looking for someone to tell you that this is the right thing for them. And this will all inform their buying decisions. So again, just noticing, one, where you feel like you are on each side of the scale. Are you more internally referenced? Do you know when something is right for you? Or are you more likely to go for the expert advice or a recommendation? And then just thinking about where your ideal, your favorite customer might sit on this scale as well. The third one down is options and procedures. So knowing whether your favorite client is options, which is they want freedom of choice, they like creativity, they like to have just some real flexibility in how they buy. Whereas on the procedure side of things, they like structure, they like predetermined ways of doing things, which is following a procedure. That offers a huge advantage, knowing which is which, because on the sales side of things, if you only have one option that you can offer people and someone is more of an options-based thinker, or that's just their preference, they might feel a little bit boxed in. If there's only one option and they would prefer a range of options, that it's going to make them feel a little bit restricted. Whereas on the other side of things, if someone is a procedures or has a preference for procedures, they might just, and you have lots of different options that you can offer them. In that instance, that person might get overwhelmed very quickly, and then they might not choose to buy at all. There's a saying, a confused mind doesn't buy. So just really understanding, what your favorite client likes when it comes to that, or what their preference is a huge help when it comes to putting together a sales process. So again, just having a look at where you feel like you might be on that. Are you options based, where you like to have a lot of different options, or do you like just one specific or a predetermined way of doing things? So just noticing what that is for you, and also what that might be for your favorite client. The fourth one down is sameness or difference. So this one you'll have seen in many, many, many different places, especially when it comes to marketing. And also when it comes to your friends as well. So this is the person who always goes to the same restaurant. They always eat the same dish. And they might opt for the iPhone 13 after loving the iPhone 12. So they're getting a new phone, but it's a new iteration of something that already exists. They prefer sameness in their upgrade. Now, the different people are the people who are prepared to go adventuring, to find new places, to try different things in different areas. And they're always just mixing it up and trying something different. They might even get a completely new phone, or look for an alternative to a phone. This will help you in your marketing, as it'll tell you whether your favorite client wants to hear the same messages, the same copy, or if they want a variety of groundbreaking new different ways of talking about your services. So it'll also help whether to run the same strategy for your sales process all the time, or if a few strategies might be a better fit. The fifth is their convincer strategy. So this is how people make their buying decisions. And it's made up of two parts. One are they more visual? Are they more auditory? Or are they more kinesthetic in terms of, do they need to touch and feel something? So things to listen out for would be, this looks right for me, this sounds right to me, or this feels right to me. So it's really them talking about which sense that they use to really make their buying decision. The other part of this, which is on the sliding scale, is, can they hear it once? So there's some people who are early adopters who are very decisive, that only need to hear something once and then that's it. Or do they need to hear it a few times, which is going to impact the sales process, because it will impact the length of the sales process. So if they're automatic, if they only need to hear it once, it's obviously a much shorter sales process. If they need to hear it quite a few times, that might make for a longer sales process. Some quite a few more emails in there, just to keep the touch points up to cater to their preference. And again, just noticing where you might be on this scale. The second last one is general or specific. Now, everyone's probably heard of this one. General is, are you a big picture thinker? And specific is, are you a detail person? So it's whether or not you look for the big picture or the detail. So for marketing, this is a really important one, because this will tell you whether or not your copy, whether it's posts, website, whatever the case might be, needs to be really long and detailed, or if it needs to be really short with really punchy, exciting ideas in there. So it'll also have an impact on your sales process as well, because it'll impact the length of the sales process, because general big picture people are are usually very quick to make decisions. So again, it will affect the length of the sales process. And detail-oriented people like to see a lot more detail. Any information that you send them will need to have all of the specs and all of the ins and outs that they really, really want to know before they feel comfortable making a decision. And last but certainly not least, there's a preference of proactivity versus reactivity. So now this will tell you whether you will have to hold their hand every step of the way, or if you can dangle your offer in front of them and let them snap it up of their own accord. So this will give you a much clearer understanding of which phrases to use in your call to action. So for someone who is proactive, it could be something like buy now. For someone who's reactive, they might be looking to get more information first. And this will dramatically impact the sales process. Reactive people might want to see a lot of your content. They might like to follow you for a while to get a real kind of feel for who you are and whether you're their kind of person. Join your mailing list, consider scheduling a call, and then they'll let you talk them through the options. Whereas someone who has a proactive preference, they might be much more open to buying after doing a chat sequence, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook. Or you might even just be able to send them directly to a landing page where there is some sort of e-commerce or a sign-up page or a buy now function. So again, like just really noticing where you are on that scale. Are you more of a proactive buyer or are you more of a reactive buyer? And how do you like to be led down that process? And then just thinking about what that is for your favorite client as well. And just the last slide, please. Thanks, Jeffrey. And the last part, I just want to. Yes, yeah. This is it. So if there's something that you want in business or life, and you don't have it, again, like people might connect with this, you might not. But it's just if there is something you want in life, there's something that's holding you back. Whether it's not understanding, whether it's fear, whatever the case might be, it is often fear that's like as low down as possible. And we've been conditioned to settle for the life that we have rather than going after what we really want. And life is far too short for that. So make the known known, and fear loses its hold over you as soon as you kind of really get a good understanding of it. And then a world of opportunities opens up. Over to you, Yafit.
Thank you very much, Aaron. That's great. Thank you. Right. So I will go through my stuff a little bit quicker just so we can finish on time, because I'm a big believer in finishing on time. So to start with, I just wanted to show you this figure of 8, because the world is full of figures of 8. Did you know that? But this is how your sales process should look like. So if you look at the, I don't know, how well you can see the actual headings in it, but the idea is that it's an ongoing process. So it starts with people buying and becoming a client, having an experience, becoming loyal, buying again, having an experience, becoming loyal. So it's not, the sales process is not that bit you do until someone becomes a client. It should encompass all of it. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. So lots of, if you go out and do what Aaron said and look on Google for, to see what a sales process entails, etc., which I'm sure you have done before, you'll see loads and loads of different ones. There's 7, there's 5, there's 4, there's 10, there's 15 steps. So I think that the approach is normally similar, because obviously you would have, you sort of have to do it in a certain way. You have to approach people and then qualify them and then talk to them and then give them a proposal. So all of that is similar, but you must look at it in a way that fits for your business. So if your business is quite small and it's only you, then don't have 15 steps to your process. Keep it simple so you can do it. And the most important thing is to make sure that you can do it, because if not, it will become one of those things that sits and gather dust, and you'll never come again to a sales process webinar because you think it's all a waste of time. So, so just really important to try and make it fit with the quirkiness of your own company and your team, if you have a team, or not if you don't. So think about that. There's some typical gaps that I mentioned earlier that I come across. And what I'll do now is just go through those 5 gaps that I find and give you some things that you could consider how, if you do indeed find a gap like that in your own sales process, on your own thinking, then perhaps it's something to consider. So essentially, the first gap that I find is how people deal with new inquiries. It's I've brought you for each step, I brought you a few quotes or just facts to sort of make you understand how important it is. So apparently 30 to 50% of sales go to the company that responds first. It probably varies between industries, but you know, it is quite a big stat. So, you know, how quickly do you respond, and do you have a way to clarify whether that's a good inquiry for you or not? I mean, the amount of people that haven't got a clue what they will actually go with and what they won't is staggering. And, you know, they're not actually very sure, you know, an inquiry comes in and it becomes a discussion, whereas you should be really clear on what it is that you do and what you would go with and what you won't, because depending on what you do, a lot of people will ask you for all sorts of things that will waste a lot of time and not make you any money or bring you any joy. So it's really important. So things to consider that you could do is an automated email response for any inquiry that comes in saying, hello, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch as soon as possible. That's if you can't or don't have anyone in your business that can react that day within 24 hours. You could give people an initial questionnaire to ask them, you know, about their inquiry. So you've got a better tool to then decide whether you can help them or not. You can, you know, things that help is understanding who your target market is and who it isn't, what products and services you offer and what you don't, and what you want to do and what you don't want to do. Those things, I mean, it sounds really obvious, but the amount of people I talk to that don't know that, and I think it really relates to things that Aaron said earlier. I think these are really important things to sort of put in place to help with that initial stage. The next gap that I come across is lead qualification. So a lot of people either peak too soon. By that, I mean they offer the world without actually charging for it. And they think they've got a client without a contract or without agreeing with them, you know, and that can often end up in a real disaster. You can end up spending a huge amount of time on offering people loads of things when, for A, you don't know what they actually want, and B, you should be paid for all this advice and stuff that you give people. People offer to do stuff for free, all sorts of things just to sort of get someone bedded in, and it's too early for that. You don't actually know, you know, what they want and whether it's right, and whether they're right for you and you're right for them. So, you know, I think an initial questionnaire with a scoring matrix is really important, that you look at each question and go, yeah, that scores this or whatever, and to allow you to build a picture in your mind. Have some key questions you always ask, you know. I know that when I speak to new prospects that come in, I really try to understand what is the real reason why they want my services. Is it a nice to have, or is it a real pain? Like, I really need it. And that's, to me, is something that really form my questions that I ask. Have a general fee proposal that you can just send out. So you have that initial conversation, talk to people, get a bit of an idea, say, look, I'm going to send you, this is how we work. We do this first and this second and this third. I'm going to just send you a general fee proposal so you understand what our fees are and how we work. And then we can talk again if it's relevant, and we can move things on. So if you do that, you actually find that some people might look at it and go, well, that's really expensive. And you could have done loads of work for them only to find that at a later stage. So I think it's quite important not to be scared to have a general proposal that explains how you work and how much you cost. And also, I think it's really important to understand the timelines and stages. So, you know, if you're somebody that works in construction and you help people with projects, you need to understand whether they actually own the land, when are they starting, who else is involved. All of these things are just really, really key. And I know that we have a variety of businesses here today, and that, you know, if you might be listening to this and going, oh, that doesn't sound like the people that talk to me, but break it down to the people who talk to you. We all need to know a little bit more, because knowledge is power. So it's very important to not jump too soon. Third gap is about asking questions, and it's all related, because I love this quote by Bruce Lee. Adam, you could take these for BNI if you want. So, I do think that a lot of us are afraid of asking questions for two reasons. One, we don't like to talk about pain because it's uncomfortable. And I always talk about that. And I always say, look, it's really, really important to uncover why people are doing things. Because if you don't know, then you can always end up being the nice to have, which they won't buy because you're too expensive. So it's really important to uncover and press on that pain so they know they must use you. And I think people also don't like to ask questions because they think it's because they get very excited. There's a new it's a new project. It sounds fantastic. We just want to sell. We want to give a solution. We want to help. Which is all great. But I think we do need to hold ourselves back a little bit and make sure that we have an evaluation phase and that we ask those hard questions. I mean, with an evaluation phase, that's something that I recommend everybody has that in their sales process. You had a lead come in, you've qualified it, you've spoken to them, you told them how much it would cost. It is working and it is the right project, and you want to go ahead. I think you need to then have a sit down with that client, either, you do it as a workshop, a planning workshop, or if it's not that kind of a business, you just sit down with them to really get under the skin of the project and understand what they want and ask loads of questions. Because firstly, it will help you to give them a much more tailored cost then, because you will know how much, and you'll also know if you use Aaron's thinking about what motivates people, it would really help you to sort of get under their skin a little bit and be able to give them the perfect proposal that they won't be able to say no to. But if they then disappear off the planet and don't come back to you and you need to follow up, well, you know so much about them and about the process now that you've got a lot more of an ability. You can email them and say, look, you said your webinar is happening next week, and we haven't even started to look at this and that. If you don't know any of these things, you just end up with a pipeline full of opportunities you thought were amazing that don't go anywhere because you haven't got the knowledge about them. So that's why I think this is a really important part of the sales process. Follow-up, I can't talk about sales process without talking about follow-up. And Wanda Allen, this is my favorite quote ever for follow-up. It is all over my website. I think it's really important. Seriously, how many times do you follow up before you give up? There are people who don't follow up at all, do you know? I think that I'm appalled by that. I think that's terrible. People actually like it when you follow up because they feel wanted and needed. We all want to be loved. So, follow-up's a form of love. I do think that what helps if you're unsure about how to do this correctly, there's two things to look at. Flip it on its head by calling it building a relationship rather than following up. Then you won't feel like you're being a pester. And then the second thing to do is to stage it. So what do you want to do, in stage one? What do you need to find out in the first follow-up? What do you need to find out in the second? And always agree with the client. Is it okay if I call in a couple of weeks? When would be good? Put time in the diary to do that, so you don't feel like you're doing something like you're annoying them in any way. If you really want to know more about that, we've done a whole webinar about follow-ups, and there's a link on our website to watch the presentation. So just go to our website and find out more if this interests you. But it is a massive part of the sales process and must be included. Don't skip it. And then the last one for me is customer experience. So I touched on that in my figure of 8 process. And I do think that I really like this quote by Gandhi. And I think it is a big part of selling, because to make your company stand out, you want people to talk about you. Differentiation in the marketplace can be really hard. You want customers to be so amazed by what you do that they talk to others, and you get people come to you through referrals, because that is the best form of selling. And to be able to create that, I mean, there's a great book about about referral marketing, the referral engine that I recommend everybody should have a look at. But I think that to create referral marketing, you really need good customer service. You need to be different. You need to be for people to really feel that what you do is different. And, and to do that, one of the key things to do is to get feedback and learn. So as part of your sales process, once you've delivered a project, I'm amazed by how many people don't then survey and ask the clients what they feel. If you work with clients ongoing, do you talk to them every month about their feedback? Do you do an annual survey to all your clients to see where you stand? I mean, there are bodies out there that would help you. They would do it and actually stand you against a scale and tell you how good you are. Then you could then boast and say, well, we're this and no one else does it. And, all of these things matter and they are a part of the sales process. Good service does make you stand out. So I think that's something that people don't generally think about when they think about a sales process. So that, I think those are the 5 steps that I wanted to go through, and the 5 gaps that I've identified are really typical and thought might help you to think about. We now have some time for questions. So it will be really nice if somebody wouldn't mind maybe giving us an example that we can talk about. And if there isn't anyone that's willing to do that, then just ask questions. Any questions? I haven't seen anything come up in the chat.
Yafit, I have a question.
Go on, Kate.
Okay. It's not really relevant at the moment, but it might be relevant to some people. Aaron, when you were talking about businesses feeling that they were too small and that they couldn't do things maybe because they didn't have enough time or their size, how would you respond if somebody wants to implement changes but doesn't feel they have the budget because they're still starting out? Which I know isn't probably relevant to a lot of people, but how would you deal with that?
I think I think we can see ourselves in a lot of things, so it could definitely be relevant. So in terms of the budget, tell me a little bit about the budget.
Well, I'm just remembering when I was like really early days, which is a long time ago. It's embarrassing to say, but it used to be, I always used to want to do things properly, but sometimes you just wouldn't have the money in the bank account. And I've never been one to sort of overreach myself. So it's that thing of like, you need to do something a bit better, but maybe you haven't got the budget for it. And how do you get around that? If you were coaching someone, for example, or as part of the sales process, how do you, how do you deal with that limitation?
So in that, like, and again, this comes down to each individual circumstances, but in that it's like there's some fear there that whatever they're going to do isn't going to work. Because essentially, like, if you have something and it's going to make you £1 million, but it's going to cost you, a couple of £1,000s to get it going, are you going to do whatever you have to do in order to find that initial kind of startup to make it happen because you just know that it's going to work? Yes. If you're a little bit iffy about whether or not it will turn into £1 million, putting that effort in and kind of committing to yourself and backing yourself in the beginning is a little bit more iffy because you're not certain of the outcome. So I would say there's a little bit of fear of failure there, and it's really just kind of uncovering that, unpacking that to how much do I want this? How much do I know that this will work? And often, sometimes just investing in yourself, like this is a very like relevant thing for like when I talk to people in my sales process. But it's like, how much do you want this? If you know that this big vision that we've spoken about is going to help a lot of people, it's going to make you, give you a lifestyle that you're really happy with, taking that first step to investing in themselves is the first sign that they're ready for it, they're committed to it, they believe it, because you got to believe it first. That's, without belief, you go nowhere. So I would say that there's a bit of a self-belief thing there first and foremost. Secondly, I think it's like, there's always a way to do whatever we want to do. We just very much restrict ourselves in terms of what we think is possible for us. So yeah, I would brainstorm with them all of the different ways that they could have what they want, rather than having to find the budget for it, and also explore, what's the real fear here, and can you break through it to take what you want as well. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, it is interesting, because I guess when we do start out, there is that uncertainty. You don't know how it's going to work out, so it will bring up all your kind of scary bits, won't it?
Yeah. If you have your own business, or if you have kids, they are the two biggest opportunities that you'll ever have to work through all of your own stuff, because those daily kind of instances where it brings out all of your fears and it brings out all of your trigger points, and you get to meet that stuff head on every single day. That's how you get through it. That's how you desensitize yourself from all of the things that hold you back in life. But again, it takes a lot to step up into what we want in our business, and the person, the best version of ourselves that we want to become. And we can either choose to step into that and growth, or we can choose comfort and staying where we are. And that's scary. And it is an identity shift. But absolutely, and again, you just got to, how much do I want this? How much better will things be when this happens? Just kind of, but also,
from a practical perspective, and this is very practical, obviously, what Aaron is saying, but you can obviously create the sales process around you, and there's loads of things that you can do with that, as you know, Kate, because you started off and you probably did that. There's loads of things that you can do that don't have to cost that much. It just costs you your time. So to start with, it's your time you invest, and then gradually you get other people to help you with different elements, because you've proven a point and you can afford it. So okay, I'm going to have to run away now, but thank you very much. Okay. Right. That's fine. It is nearly time to finish. Any other questions from anybody at all? Steve, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I've got some background noise here as well, which I'm unmuted. On the customer experience side of it, I think I work for a company that does deliver good customer experience. How would you get that into the sales process at the end? I realise you've got to, but if you're just saying words, would you do a little video with somebody and say, watch this? Or would you have something written down? Or how would you get that into the sales process?
Get what into the sales process?
Well, the customer experience, I suppose.
Oh, okay. So it is about, I think when I create sales processes for clients, I put it into the funnel, if you like. So we look at, obviously it depends on how you deliver. So if it's a one project, it will be done in a certain way. And if it's obviously ongoing, it will be done in another way. But the main thing really is about considering how you can make your customer service amazing. But it's things like onboarding pack. Do you have one so people understand how they what's happening, what's the next steps, who's the team, who's going to look after them? Do you have one of those? How do you deliver the service? What little bits could you give them? Is there any opportunity to give them any gifts or do something that would make it feel really different from others? And then have that in your sort of process, that at the end of it, or periodically, you ask them for their opinion, you send them a survey, you have a feedback sort of opportunity meeting with them, so you really can learn about what have you done, what can you do differently, what have you done well, to really start to deliver, to develop people who are fans of your business that will go out there and shout and get you more business. That's really what you want. And I mean, the referral engine that I mentioned has loads of ideas. It's brilliant. So if you're really interested in that, to just read that book. It is really helpful. I mean, I've changed loads and loads of things over lockdown reading that. So I really recommend it. But I think to answer your question, if you add it into the process, into the funnel, and you have specific steps that you take, then obviously once you're embedding it into the company, then things are more likely to happen.
Okay, good. Thank you. Because I feel that with any of our businesses, I think that if we've done a good job for somebody, then that's always a good place to start as a referral, really, because they will recommend you because you've done a decent job. Yes,
definitely. And often you miss out on knowing that as well, because we don't ask. True. So people don't have an opportunity to tell. They think we're great, but they don't tell us unless we ask. So
Or unless we ball something up.
Yeah, that's right. Any more questions from anyone? Sorry, Aaron.
I was just going to say from Steve, the other thing is with those people that really do appreciate you, because it takes a lot for someone to actually say, yes, I really like what you do. They're the kind of people that you really want to profile to find out all of their preferences, to really build the sales process and your marketing to really cater to them, to bring more of them in.
No, agreed.
Sorry to cut you off, mate.
Ian, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask a quick question about, I mean, I use a CRM to document my process. Presumably you recommend that.
Yes.
So that otherwise, if you've got an awful lot of clients at different stages, it's impossible to keep a grip of it.
Absolutely. I mean, it depends. I mean, some people can use a spreadsheet, fine. It depends how many clients you've got and at what process you are, at what stage you are in the business. But funnily enough, the webinar we did last quarter was all about CRM management, because I really do think it supports and underpins the sales process. So I completely agree with you. It's a good tool to use, and definitely something to invest in.
Yeah, and they're all adaptable, aren't they? And you can expand on it, and it's still quite tough to keep on top of when you've got a lot going on. But I think without it, it'd be absolute disaster area.
It's all about that building the knowledge and the relationship, isn't it? It needs to be somewhere outside your head, especially if you're going to build a team, which I think is something you said you'd be looking at some
yeah,
point.
that's I think the fear for me is I really don't want to employ anyone. So the only people I use at the moment are VAs. But I think it's got to come at some point. But I've got to make sure the relationship is somehow a self-employed basis. That could be the tricky bit.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to talk to you outside the call, because a lot of my team is self-employed. I'm happy to talk to you about that.
Okay.
I think in this new world where we're all getting used to it, and even creating, we've all had to work in a certain way over the years. Now we kind of get to create how we want to work moving forward. Obviously, we're working within our clients and all that sort of stuff, but people might be open to all kinds of different opportunities. So really to ask what their needs are and really get an understanding of what you want. People might be open to a relationship that's win-win.
Yeah,
that's true. That's very true. Anything else from anyone? I'm conscious that we're getting to the end of the session. So anybody else want to ask a quick question? No? I suppose I stopped. Sorry, Jonathan, hello.
Hello. Thank you for letting me in today. I have a question specifically, Aaron, about you were talking about things like vulnerability and things like that in relationship building. In what I do, in what our business does, we are the smallest of sprats of minnows in an industry dominated by gargantuan blue whales. So it's trying to figure out, I guess, how do you reconcile the customer's perception that size equals professionalism and vast numbers of staff members versus the thing that they can afford, which is us. The benefits come from that. Like, we are exposed to hundreds of different things, and we now have greater expertise in some of those bigger companies because of that. But how do you reconcile without telling a customer, A, you can't afford the thing you want, stop being silly, and B, bringing them along board so they're in partnership with the process, because there's an element of vulnerability and professionalism that you need to reconcile?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jonathan. And for me, so what came up there was, and if you, I think businesses having the bravery to be able to say, look, don't be silly, you can't afford that, or just being really, really honest with people. So what kind of came up for me there was kind of just being really authentic about, what is the core business that you really want to be doing, and who are the people that you really want to be working with? Because while these gargantuan businesses can work with anyone, I kind of get the feeling that you might be a little bit more selective, or you might have a bit more of a
the opposite, actually.
Okay.
We're the opposite. We get to do this,
Yep.
Because we can be flexible. A big company can do that thing, but very well and very cheap. And
Gotcha. So in that vulnerability, I would say that, you know, in your marketing, in your sales process, everything it's being around, you know, this is who we are, and it's kind of like, rather than speaking to, it's owning that is your selling point, and it's kind of like being really descriptive in and selective in how you promote your business, and then that will bring in however many, like the kinds of people that you want. And I think it's probably really around getting really clear on what the preferences are of those people, and then that's how you use to target more people just like them. Because even though you have a lot more flexibility than some of the big gargantuans, it still sounds like there's some limitations there between, you know, what you can actually do for them if they can't afford it or whatever the case might be.
I agree.
So I would just say, like,
sorry, can you say that last little bit again? I lost signal for a second there. Sorry. There might be some hesitation in, and then I lost it.
I might have lost it too. So it was, I think
you were saying that there's obviously limitation in which clients you can serve, even if you are able to serve smaller clients. You know, there's going to be ones that are too small, and we know from our previous conversation, Johnson, that is true, and that you are really where you need to really be able to differentiate quite quickly and have a process that helps you do that, and then look at what you can offer who. So I think those are sort of the questions that we are looking at when we looked at before. So I don't know whether any of the information today has helped with sort of clarifying a little bit.
Absolutely.
I think with that authenticity piece, and just really owning, like, and that's where the vulnerability comes in, just really owning what you can and can't do for people, and just really accepting this is neither good nor bad, it just is what it is. And then just that's kind of where that acceptance comes in, and just being okay with that. Does that help?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, everyone. So just some housekeeping, if my computer agreed to move. So essentially, we have a lunch webinar every quarter. We will invite you all, because you came to this one. If you don't want to attend, you don't have to, but we will invite you and let you know about it. We're going to cover sales attitudes and mindset in a bit more detail next time. And, you know, if you wanted to discuss sales process support, anything, you know, either of us will be obviously very happy to talk to you. So just reach out and let us know. My office will send out an email to everyone with the recording from today, and also with the contact details for ourselves, so you can get in touch. And Aaron's document that some people have been asking for in the comments already. So we will send that across and share that. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It was lovely to see you all, and yeah, very happy to speak further if you want to.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.